The meeting of the Dudley-Charlton Regional School Committee is now in session. It is Wednesday, August 8th. It is 7 p.m. We're at the Charlton Middle School. Let's all stand for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our regular meeting of Wednesday, July 11th. Do I have a second? Second. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? And there's one abstention. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our executive session of Wednesday, July 11th. Motion. Okay. Do I have a second? All right. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? And one abstention. 6-1. Citizens Forum. Do we have anyone this evening that would like to come forward to speak with us? No one yet? Okay. Communications, Dr. Nash, do you have any this evening?
I don't.
Okay, and I don't. How about our members? All right. Superintendent's report, Dr. Nash.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you. You have in your packet this evening two areas that I'd like to report on. I think the committee probably was well aware of the first area, and that was the most recent Supreme Court decision, what is known as the Janus decision. Not to belabor this, because I provided you with the National School Board's FAQ, or 10 questions that one asks with respect to this ruling, but certainly as we begin our contract negotiations, as you are aware, the Supreme Court ruled that public unions were unable, public employee unions were unable to move forward to continue to collect fees. Well, certainly dues can be collected. The 5-4 ruling basically said that it is an infringement upon the First Right Amendments, and therefore, because some of the fees could be used to support political groups or candidate. And so, as you are aware, there are a number of states in the country that allow this, and certainly on a state-by-state basis, and within school districts within those states, some have negotiated in their contract agency fees. I did have a discussion actually in my meeting today, my initial meeting with Kevin Foley, the union president, about this, and he is well aware that at this point in time, when we go into negotiations, we will have to make sure that we are consistent with the Janus ruling, which basically no longer allows for agency fee service. So any questions that you might have, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory at this point. The only other thing I would add is that some of you probably read in the press that the legislators in Massachusetts are looking to create some kind of a bill that might lessen the impact of this, to be determined. Nothing new that I have seen, and I don't think any action really has taken place of any substance at this point in time. So that was the first part, but we should be aware as we move forward that we'll have to address that. The second piece that is new, and I think to some degree you'll hear delineation of what that looks like and is played out when Mr. Matho talks about some of this in our discussion around FY19 budget, and now that the numbers have been finalized. But I put in your packet a memo from Tom Scott, who is the executive director of MASS. He, along with Roger Hatch, who is really the consultant that MASS uses for school finance, talked about the impact of what we call the final chapter, what Chapter 70 finally looked like by the time they were done, and the impact it had on some of our educational budget numbers. A couple of key points in that memo that I would point out. One, that overall, the final numbers on Chapter 70 includes a 3.4% increase. This is across the state, of course, over FY18. And under that, a couple of key points, that the cost for ELL students, because I know that certainly our district has a number of ELL students, are now counted as increments in the foundation budget. My understanding is that's somewhat of a shift. The minimum aid is now at $30 per pupil, and that there were some significant changes to district enrollments and errors that came out in January, and as a result of this, the number of students that were left out of the foundation enrollment did have some impact, and that has been adjusted and reflected overall. And there are a lot of other points they make, but the bottom line is that when Governor Baker signed the state budget, that overall that figure increased to $161 million. I would point out that there is, as you know, a very strong movement afoot that the Foundation Budget Review Committee, I may not have all the initials correctly, ended their meetings without a lot of things determined and with really no pathway clearly delineated in making any progress in trying to look at this formula that has been in existence since ed reform came about, and disappointing. And I can tell you that the Superintendent's Association is going to make a major push in a number of ways through media to let the state legislators know, and they certainly have done that in front of them in a number of sessions, that this is unacceptable, that we are still dealing with the issue that, unfortunately, sometimes where you rest your head at night determines how much you get. And so this has continued to be a focus for a number of years. It's been something that over the years, the 20-plus years or whatever, people have said, yes, we need to revisit this, we should be revisiting it, but it certainly has not been given the attention that it's been given most recently, and partly because of the frustration that this committee has really not made any inroads. Because ultimately, there will be districts that will be benefactors of this, and there will be other school districts who certainly will be losers, and I think that politically doesn't sit well, but they need to make some decisions, so just a little update on that. And that's the two on my report.
Okay, any questions? All right. That brings us to new business, and it brings us to FY 2019 budget. And Dr. Nash, do you have anything to say?
No, Mr. Mathau will update the committee both on the FY19 budget and any other necessary actions that are needed.
Thank you very much. As the committee is aware, we started the year with the initial governor's budget, and through the process with the pending override, we did not make revisions to the budget based on the House budget or the Senate Ways and Means budget. With the successful passage of the override, the only recommendation I have are for some changes at this point in time to the FY19 revenue budget now that it's been finalized. As Dr. Nash has indicated, Chapter 70 has gone up for the district. What that means was an additional $37,970 over the initial projection back in January in the governor's budget. In regional transportation, we did make some sizable gains. The cherry sheets released, which are the estimates for revenues for municipalities and for regional school districts, shows $1.9 million in estimated revenue for FY19 coming to us. With the adoption of the Regional Transportation Revolving Fund a few years ago, we're able to reserve any excesses in any given year to use in an upcoming fiscal year. So based on the fact that we had assessments very specifically targeted to the override, and given the fact that we can utilize this regional transportation reimbursement, if it holds true, We still have to file our expenditure numbers and our ridership numbers, and that will compute out to a number. And then the state's reimbursement figure would be 80% of that, again, projected on the cherry sheets to be $1.9 million. I'm recommending that we increase our usage in regional transportation from the initial budget by $107,000 approximately. What that will allow us to do is lower our E&D usage down to the historical comfort level of the committee at about $1.2 million, specifically $1.197. So with those revenue changes, we have a little more certainty in our E&D figure going forward. I'll get to that certification in a minute when I talk about the FY18 closeouts. Those revenue changes will allow the assessments to each town to remain static, although there will be some adjustments between transportation and operation for the towns. If the committee votes to approve these changes, we will notify the towns that their assessments didn't change, but their individual components of operating versus transportation did. Based on the way they voted their budgets, it should not require any additional action on their part. I don't know if there are any questions specifically to the FY19 revenue budget.
Do we have to vote on the new figures because the line
I would
items
ask you
changed?
to, yes.
And the figures, what figures do you want us to include?
As presented in
Right,
the
yes,
packet.
yeah.
So in this revised final budget at 2018-19 column.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the figures as presented by Mr. Matthew.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
I think we should stress the point that no, it's still the same
Same.
assessment, it's just that we had extra money to rearrange
Right,
some of the
right.
sources of income.
If the committee likes, I can put a little background
I think you
about the
should.
E&D so that they're aware we did this for a strategic purpose.
Right, because they're gonna say, why didn't you, why not assessments go down, we got
Right.
200,000 extra, so you should have an explanation.
It's in line with what both towns are trying to do, which is to place money back into their stabilization accounts. It's the same thing.
And it doesn't change our figure for our final
No.
budget at all.
Exactly.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes,
For the FY19
Okay.
budget update, yes.
all right. Now, Director of Finance and Operation Report, Mr. Matthew.
Thank you very much. As I was alluding to, I'd like to talk a little bit about the FY18 closeouts. Again, as the committee is well aware, FY18 started off about this time 12 months ago as a very challenging year when we lost the generator at the Shepherd Hill High School. It continued to be a challenging year all throughout. In June, I had estimated that we would return approximately $900,000 to the E&D fund. As of today, I'm anticipating that number to be about $800,000, so less than initially projected. However, I do also plan on carrying forward an additional $60,000 in circuit breaker funding into FY19. We have identified at the June meeting and later on in the agenda here a need for additional IAs, and there's some movement within the special ed budget that will be brought forward to the committee at the first September meeting. But given that, and given the fact that we were able to lower our E&D usage for the FY19 budget, and with a projection of having E&D certified in the fall at about the $1.4 million range, I thought this was the prudent financial decision and planning to make. So in the end, I think we're basically in about the same spot as we had hoped to be at the beginning of June, but a little bit better. I don't know if there are any questions specifically on the FY18 closeout.
Any questions? No?
Okay. FY19 budget, we've just gone over, so I think we're good there. We do have the last remaining FREC bids for approval of the school committee. The standing joke is, no, unfortunately, there's no ice cream. And again, today, it really could be used, that's for sure. But we do have the bids for the cafeteria for the food service program, specifically for the milk, for the market basket of frozen foods, and for the non-food cafeteria supplies. I don't know if there are any questions on the bids as presented.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the bids for the FY19 Market Basket Frozen Foods and Thurston Foods at the unit prices listed.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Just a last note, we do have warrants for the committee this evening, including a payroll and deduction warrant.
Okay, that concludes your report, Rich?
Yes.
Thank you. Report of Budget and Finance Subcommittee. So this evening at 5 o'clock, you guys met, okay? And Stephanie, do you have a report for us? It's Elaine. Oh, okay.
Actually. So the Budget and Finance Committee met at 5 o'clock, and it was our first meeting since town elections, so there was a reorganization, and I was elected as chair, and Mrs. Reed was elected as vice chair.
Okay,
of the committee.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Both of you.
Mrs. Kabala didn't fight us for the position.
In fact, I nominated him.
So we did work tonight to confirm that we will be meeting on 5 o'clock on Wednesdays. We're going to meet for the first meeting of every month, so it'll be the second Wednesday of every month. We'll meet at 5. What we have decided to do is to hold any, because we're going from this budget and finance right into this meeting, that we will report on our budget and finance meeting at the second meeting of the month. So on the fourth Wednesday of the month, we'll report on what the meeting was. That way we'll be able to have the minutes written, and when they're approved, they can be released to the full committee, and we'll be able to have had a moment to research anything that was being discussed, so we can be more fully informative to you. We did start to talk about some of the major things that are coming up this year for budgeting purposes, that we have a tentative agenda set for the first 3 meetings that we have. So in September, we're going to focus on capital needs, where we have previously discussed the debt exclusion coming off the books, and we want to start getting prepared for that conversation. October, we're going to finish up anything regarding capital needs, and we're going to start looking at upcoming contract negotiations for the year. In November, we're going to focus on contracts. So that's what we've decided today, and we're looking forward to working together for another productive year.
Thank you, Elaine. Any questions for Elaine? Okay, we're moving right along. Consideration to approve additional special education positions, and that's Dr. Nash.
Thank you. You had received a memo from Mr. Matthau on July 20th, and as I go back and put together a little bit of the history prior to my being here, it's my understanding that in the spring, a need for some additional instructional assistance, SPED instructional assistance, was brought before the school committee. The potential increase at that time, again, as I understand it, the number was 4.2. The school committee voted to approve 2.2 at that time. Mrs. Allen has been in her position for a little bit longer than I have, about a month, and has really been dissecting the budget. In fact, we've probably had more conversations in the last few weeks in meetings to discuss the impact of some things that probably had not been carefully considered, and I'll leave it at that. And so there is a need to add an additional, the additional 2.2 that initially had been requested is needed. And then in part of, I'm sure, the discovery process, or certainly the identification process, as we looked at the instructional assistance, Mason Road also needs a 0.4 for the substantially separate program. So that would bring your total to 4.6. So you're really looking at, you voted of that 2.2. So you're looking at 2.4, if I did my math correctly. Okay.
Okay,
All right.
so I will entertain a motion to approve the additional special education positions.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Would that be funded out of the circuit breaker?
I'm
Okay.
glad you asked that, because I should have said that.
Mom's money.
I know, right. It will be,
Oh,
yes,
sorry.
right.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous. Introduction of interim principal, Mason Road School, who is Jennifer Gusto.
Gusto.
Congratulations, and Dr. Nash, you'll probably want to speak to it.
Thank you. Well, first, I need to thank Laurie Pacheco, because on my second day, Robin Parmalee called and said that she was going to accept, or seriously considering it, but I think had really in her heart had known, accepted another position. So while I think the superintendent in Webster was eager for me to commit, I was probably a little bit terse with her, and at that point, it was my second day, and I really hadn't had a chance. And then in stepped Mrs. Pacheco to say, look, I'd be more than happy to work through the process. And obviously, she's the counterpart to this individual, and her knowledge and experience, certainly at this point in time in my life, 2 days in, I was more than happy to sit with her, and actually I didn't have to do much sitting. We communicated via email, text, telephone, whatever, and put out a call. As I told you, I was probably leaning toward an interim at this late date for all kinds of reasons in the memo that I provided to you at the last meeting, and put out a call, and I think had a really good representative interview committee, of which Mrs. Kathleen C., because I will not do a good job pronouncing that name yet, graciously represented the school committee, and also obviously a parent of students who will be in that building. And throughout, we had a little under 20 applicants, was it, Laurie?
There were 23.
23. Laurie and I had said we would do the paper screening, which we did, and it's very interesting to me that she and I agreed in probably less than 10 minutes. So I think it speaks something to probably, well, at least my years of experience and probably yours, a lot less than mine. And we interviewed, they interviewed the committee, 5 candidates. My charge to the committee was send me the candidates, 1, 2, 3, whatever, that you would like me to meet, that you feel could do the job. And there was only one that rose to the top. For a lot of reasons, but I think I can summarize, and certainly Laurie was there throughout the entire search and would certainly be able to give you more insight as they debated, or maybe didn't debate to some degree. I think I always talk about fit, right time, right place, and I think that's critical. And I think I said that probably to you when I was interviewing. And I think what the committee saw in Mrs. Desto was she is the right person at the right time in the right place because of her background and experiences. As you all know her, before I knew her, she worked in this district. She comes with experience as an administrator, which I think is critical at this point when you're doing certainly a transition this late. It's good to have someone who's had that experience leading a building before. She has SPED experience, which I think is extremely important at the elementary level, and she brings that as a former team chair and working in this district, and in her current position. So and there is a familiarity, I think, and a comfort with knowing her style that I think is critical, again, when you're looking at this kind of thing happening over a short period of time. Staff have a right to say, how is this going to happen? When you look back and you say, in a short period of time, they've had a lot of change. And change is difficult, as we all know, for all of us, particularly, I think, more so for adults than children. So I met with her. We had a wonderful conversation. My comment to her was, oh, I have to be careful now I want to make sure I don't say anything. And she said, no, I'm the better Desto anyway. If those were, I think, your words, not mine. And we are thrilled. She'll be joining us. She's unofficially been working. In fact, today I had sent an email on a personnel change, and Jennifer is on our email and getting those, even though she's probably finishing up some of her duties. Robin and I have met, and she's done an excellent job in exit planning. You should feel very comfortable that she does not leave any stones unturned. And we will have Robin back for whatever time that Jen needs her, whether it's immediate or in the future. I have already, spoken with Ruth Ann Gogan, the superintendent, and Webster. She recognizes that there will be a need, but I will certainly leave it up to Jen and to Robin to determine when that time is, when it's best for her to be back with Jen and spend some time, whether it's voicemail, email, in person, or whatever. So I am more than pleased to announce Mrs. Jennifer Desto as the interim principal at Mason Road School. Jennifer, if you'd like to say a few words.
I couldn't be more excited, first of all, because I think it's been 2 years too long that it took me to come back to the district. But I do want to extend my sincere appreciation to Lori and the entire search committee, and certainly to Dr. Nash for allowing me this amazing opportunity that I hope in 1 year's time we're going to come back to here, and it's no longer going to have an interim attachment and maybe be that forever. So I'm extremely excited. I cannot wait to get in there and start working and getting some things done. So thank you all.
Congratulations. Good luck. Okay, so that's one worry eliminated. Consideration. Consideration of requests for home instruction, policy IHBG. Dr. Nash.
Yes,
You have a few more this
I do.
evening.
The committee has received a request from 3 parents to homeschool their children, but in light of the fact that we are still receiving requests and knowing that we wanted to get them in, we also would ask that there are 4 more students that we received requests for homeschooling. 2 are renewals of those, and 1 is a new request. So, and one family has 2 students, so that's why it adds up to 3.
Okay,
So I'd ask that you would approve, you acknowledge those, because in essence, you don't have to really approve those.
so I'll entertain a motion to approve the home requests that we have gotten from Dr. Nash.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous.
Okay, thank you.
Consideration to approve non-resident enrollment, policy JF. Dr. Nash?
Okay, you also have in your packet 2 requests. One is in alliance with your current policy. This is from the Ferrera family, asking that their daughter, who will be a senior, be allowed to attend her senior year at Shepherd Hill. And you have a policy that does allow that, so I would ask that the school committee support its policy and approve the attendance of Audrey Ducharme for her senior year at Shepherd Hill.
And then we have another one, though.
Yes, you do.
We can do those together.
All right, we can.
uh,
We also have another request, and actually, Mrs. Marshall is here this evening, and...
Yeah, we'll just take the senior first.
Okay,
Because
we
that's-
will do that,
okay.
yes. So Mrs. Marshall has a 2-part request. One fits under your policy. And the first part of her request is that her eldest daughter, Hannah, will be a senior, and that she be allowed to attend Shepherd Hill High School for her senior year. So again, that is part of the policy that the school committee has, so I would recommend that you would approve those 2.
Okay, so I'm going to entertain a motion with Dr. Nash's recommendation to approve the two seniors, allow them to attend Shepherd Hill.
So moved. Second.
Discussion?
The question. The student that is not in the state of Massachusetts will receive no reimbursement for them being a student here.
Correct.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, so we have,
Can I just make a clarification? Would you rather take two separate votes then? Because
Yes.
I think we should
Yeah.
split the two
Okay.
students, because
All right.
I think you'd agree to the Webster one.
Correct.
So why don't we do the
Okay.
motion? I'll
Wanna
make a
go back
motion that we.
to,
we'll go back.
I'll make, a-
First of
I'll
all,
withdraw,
withdraw the second first, and then the motion.
I'll withdraw the
and I. do-
And then, okay.
I'll
So
make a
you're-
motion-
I thought we were going to go by the policy. I should
there's
have
two
taken them
different cases,
separate,
there's one.
yeah.
I'll make a motion to allow Audrey Ducharme to attend her senior year at Shepherd Hill under policy District SC Policy JF.
second.
Okay, any discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries.
Then I'll make a
It's
motion.
unanimous.
Okay. I'll make a motion to allow Hannah Marshall to attend her senior year at Shepherd Hill, although she is living in Connecticut.
Second.
Okay, any more discussion on that? Okay, all in favor?
Wait,
Okay, I'm sorry.
I struggle a bit with that, simply because a decision has been consciously made to move out of the state of Massachusetts, and we do not get any kind of reimbursement for that child to attend. While I sympathize with any senior that is the possibility exists that they won't be graduating with their classmates, and I, as a senior, would want to do so. I do struggle with the monetary implications of allowing an out-of-state student to come to our district for free while others are paying taxes to have their children go to our district.
Any other discussion?
In the policy JC, or JF, does it say anything about living in Massachusetts? I don't think it does it?
It states it in the teacher contract.
Right.
Right,
They're
that's
two
what they
different.
teach. Right,
Yeah, that was-
One that's
that's
governed
two-
by teacher
Right,
contract.
but I'm
and
not,
one is governed
I'm
by
not discussing
policy.
now because of the.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I think, because I called into DESI to get some clarification on this for myself today, to see if there was some way that we could find some type of reimbursement for this. So, Rob O'Donnell's answer to me was that unless the home district was willing to pay tuition, there's no incentive for a school district in Connecticut to pay us tuition for a student. And I have some differencing of opinion with it being a senior year. I can empathize with that because I stood in those shoes as a high school student being moved, okay? But I also think that it sets a precedent. I know that we discussed this years ago for another situation, and the thought was that, if there was a tuition paid, we would allow it to happen. We had that conversation when we were adjusting our policy regarding that. It's very difficult to be put in a situation to do something in the best interest of one student that can come back and then become the new precedent for what it is. So then it just doesn't remove any incentive for people to remain in state so that we're actually getting credit as a school district for educating. So it's it's very difficult once you walk over to the threshold of making exceptions such as this, because we now become financially, liable for students with no reimbursement. So it's easy to say it's one student, but then it opens the door for other people to say, but you did it for so-and-so, I need you to do it for me.
I'm just gonna say, I think a senior situation is different from any other year. I don't think we're gonna be flooded with students moving out of the state. If they moved to Webster or Worcester, they could come under school choice, because we probably have an extra seat at the high school. But I think for senior, I looked at the policy, there's absolutely no mention of where the person moves to, as opposed to the teacher contract, which is not relevant in this case. So I think, in the best interest of the child, I don't think we're gonna be swamped with kids next year moving to Connecticut or Rhode Island and coming. I think that's very rare. So I would say, let the student finish the year.
And I
The year-
agree
the school
on
year.
that, because I think it is two different situations. Seeing that the student is a senior, I wouldn't want to penalize the senior. And I would agree with Kathy, tend to agree with Kathy. Any other?
I think I'm hesitant on the fact that we don't have a specific statement in our policy that says out of state or not. So I would say that, in this situation, you err with allowing her to come, but we need to maybe revisit our policy to be absolutely clear on that.
There always is the option, we did this years ago, of charging a person from Connecticut to come in. We actually set a tuition rate. Remember doing that years and years, before
Right.
school choice even came in. This was like way back when. And we did have students, maybe one or two, that would
Yeah.
come from Connecticut for
Well,
some
it's,
reason.
it's the tuition is what we get from the state,
Right,
the
it would be just per
reimbursement.
pupil cost, so to speak. I think we did charge it maybe once,
Yeah.
but we always waived it for other people.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? And, okay. Motion carries 4 and 3 opposed. Okay, now we will take Dr. Nash, the other policy.
Thank you. So also, Mr. and Mrs. Marshall requesting that their two younger daughters, Margaret, who would be in grade 6, and Elizabeth, who would be in grade 3, both at Dudley Middle School and Dudley Elementary School respectively, be allowed to attend schools this year only in Dudley. Policy, as you know, JH doesn't cover that because it covers seniors, so therefore it would need to come back to you. The collective bargaining agreement that does cover that aspect specifically addresses this with respect to teachers who live in Massachusetts. So therefore, I couldn't waive, as I said to Mrs. Marshall, I can't approve that because the collective bargaining agreement's language limits it and says that you must reside in Massachusetts. Mrs. Marshall, as she says, will be moving to Connecticut. And as she said to me, unfortunately, I probably didn't read the policy, read my collective bargaining agreement very carefully. So she is asking that only her two daughters be allowed for this year only to attend, as she explains in her letter, so, as to the reasons.
Okay, first I'll entertain a motion to approve this request. I need a motion, then we'll discuss it.
I'll make the motion for discussion purposes.
Right, and second, okay, so discussion. Who wants to start?
Well, I'll just speak. I was on the negotiating team for the teachers, but I assume Massachusetts was put in there because then we can count them as a student in our
Right.
district. We get full
To reimbursement.
And I
You're
think
counted
that
in
must,
the
I'm not sure,
October
but that must
1st.
have been why it was I'm not sure if Mr. Foley could address that, if it was put in for Massachusetts only because we would get reimbursed from the state for that person, or do you remember?
I don't think we got into the whole thing about whether it was a state, reciprocity thing.
Okay.
But they are able
We
to,
can count them as a regular person.
You
For
can.
purposes of your October 1st enrollment,
Right.
which is used to determine part of your monies, they have to reside, we double-check that with our data coordinator, and they do have to reside in Massachusetts to be counted in the October 1st enrollment.
And if I recall from conversations with Mr. Desto, we did discuss that the reason that we specifically stated Massachusetts was for that reason.
right.
I have a question. Those of you that have institutional knowledge from this committee, has this ever been brought forth before?
The only thing I could probably say, if it were, I think we charged them tuition, I think, but I can't be 100% sure of that. It was years ago.
Because I think it's not under school choice. And if someone comes and asks us and we take them in, we charge tuition if it's in another state. Otherwise, you're under school choice for Massachusetts. And I think, Kathy, once
I
we
think it was
did
years and years
charge
ago,
them
yeah.
tuition. We let someone in and we did charge them tuition.
I think so. I
And-
can't be sure of that figure.
And so maybe you all won't agree with me, but if we were going to put that forth tonight as an option, can we make that a requirement of an approval? That if this person is interested and willing to pay a set tuition, that if it were voted so, we could say yes. I realize that this is maybe, you think, setting a precedent. I think this is not something that we are going to be asked a lot. And I believe, I read the letter and have heartfelt reasons to believe that this family has needs for this. And if we're not here for every student that has lived through these walls, I don't know. That's just my opinion.
And,
Do you want Pauline? Does she want to talk? Mrs. Marshall? Yes, Mrs.
oh,
Marshall.
right.
Mrs. Marshall?
Yes,
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall, do
Mrs.
you want to
Marshall,
come
would you
up
like
to
to-
the table? Come on.
Thank you.
First, I just want to thank you for entertaining my request. I was poorly informed when we made this decision. I did not realize that it was once you cross the Mass line, that it didn't work that way. So that's my own foolish fault. I have a daughter that struggles. I'm sorry. This isn't over my kids. I'm sorry. Dealing with
We
family
understand,
things
we
right
all
now.
have kids and I would do the same.
My daughter deals with terrible anxiety. It took us until the beginning of April to get her functioning. Thank you. Making it through the school day without having to leave class, sit with Carl Struzzulo, meet with him regularly, sleep through the night, not need help picking out clothes, tying her shoes because she had completely shut down with the complete change. It was just so distressing to see that in her. And my mindset was that it's okay if we move because she can attend with me because I work in the district. And I truly had no idea that crossing the state line created that complexity. And so I was able to rest thinking that she and my younger daughter, my older sons, I will happily, we'll go to Woodstock. That was, the plan. But I'm just afraid of what it will do to her. My youngest daughter had asked for just one more year to just transition, make friends, and get used to the idea. And again, I thought that was not a problem. But my greatest concern is my sixth grader and what this change would do to another school year and how it would affect her. I'm afraid for that. So I understand what I'm asking you is difficult. I'm asking you to make an exception, and I just hope in this one case that you could consider what the whole picture is, and it would make a huge difference for our family. I've been here in this district for 10 years teaching now. Love this district for family reasons. It is the right choice for our family to move for personal reasons. But I love this district and have enjoyed my time here, and I just appreciate whatever consideration you can give that.
To follow up on Mrs. Terry's question, would you be adverse to paying some sort of a tuition? I'm just throwing
You
that
gotta
out there.
see how much it is,
Yeah.
It depends. I don't know how much it is. I mean,
because,
Well, my only
I-
suggestion would be like 5,000, like school choice. That's what we get for school choice student, right?
5,000.
So it'd be comparable to almost like school choice for an out-of-state person.
so that's 10,000 for two.
I'm just throwing that
Yeah.
figure out. I haven't talked with anyone about it. I'm just thinking of that figure.
it scares me. It makes me hyperventilate.
Okay.
Yeah. So realistically, that comes from their college money
Okay.
that I won't.
Okay,
If I say that I can do that,
okay, I'm just asking, because Mrs. Terry brought up that question.
I don't have a good answer for you.
Okay.
so we'll discuss it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
So, any other discussion before we take the vote?
I have something. So, being as, I'm gonna agree with the whole, I don't see an influx of people moving out of state to come to this district and stay in this district. I think we should consider what's on the table, but work on this JF memo and change it. So going forward, it is outlined, and even in the contract itself for the teachers, it's outlined.
It is in a contract.
It is, it does
Yeah,
say.
it
out of
says
state.
they have to be in
Okay.
Massachusetts. The other policy for the senior didn't. But
Okay.
this one says it in the contract. So, in other words, we're going against the contract, so just to be,
In clarification.
my heart says I want
The,
to vote
the
for it.
contract also specifies that these requests need to be in before May 1st for planning purposes.
I think we
So,
got one a couple weeks ago that was late too, didn't we?
we did have one that came in that was late. So, again, this is where you get into a situation when you start to bend rules
Yep,
that
but we did
now
do
it
it.
becomes, becomes more frequent. I, it's very hard to advocate on behalf of the district in the role that we serve as school committee members, as, the fiscal agents for the district, and not understand and be empathetic to the situation of a family in the need. And I can empathize to you on all of the fronts that you're talking about, because I've done everything that you've been doing, and I'm extremely empathetic. But fiscally, when you look at this for a district, and you're looking at per pupil expenditure, to allow 3 students in with no reimbursement at all from the state, we're looking at $35,000. And I'm trying to balance, goodwill with a dedicated teacher, understanding the needs of a student, but I also have to understand the needs of the district. So we're educating, we're going to be fiscally responsible for 3 students that, anything can happen during the course of the year beyond per pupil that we will be we're fiscally liable for, with no reimbursement from the state. That, as a taxpayer and a parent, that's a substantial amount of money that we're committing in a budget for no reimbursement. So, I'm not being unsympathetic, but I'm looking at, these are the small fiscal changes, these are the small policies, and contracts that we don't abide by, that turn around and make big impacts when you add them all up. So I'm just putting it out there. I'm not unsympathetic to the family, not unsympathetic to the situation and wanting to do what's best for the student. But I, turn around and look at the fiscal impact of this one decision. It's a large fiscal impact.
So I have one more thing. What if we were to break it down and actually do senior 6th grade, 3rd grade? Instead of
we've
doing
already-
all of, instead of doing both students.
We already did the
No,
senior.
no, but when I know,
Sixth,
we've already done the
third.
senior, but
Right.
you said split it up from the senior, from the 2,
Sixth.
grade 6 and grade 3.
Right.
I'm saying split it.
6 and
Have
3,
grade,
have
the
3 votes.
senior, we've already,
Done.
grade 6, the one
Each
student,
child
Right.
and then,
individually.
exactly.
Both
Is there a way to
individually.
do it that way?
Oh, yeah, we can vote
I
on
mean,
I
that.
just have to throw out there that, and I've said this before, when we were criticized by taking kids in and only getting 5,000 for school choice, and I've said it over and over again, we actually don't spend 12,000 in every kid. If a new student comes into a building, the only cost per se for that person is probably a computer and textbooks. So even though on the books, it looks like each kid costs us 10 or 12,000, one extra kid really doesn't, and that's how I always sold school choice. When we were criticized that we were getting 5,000 when it cost us 12, I used to say, it doesn't really. If we had put in a new teacher, a new class, if we had 25 kids come into 1st grade tomorrow, then we would have to spend a lot of money. So I don't really think we can say that those 3 students are gonna cost us 35,000. I feel sympathy for the parent. I'm changing my vote because I just couldn't live with myself
my
with that
heart.
poor child.
And
And I'm thinking maybe we should, I know the contract, we're not we're not gonna be grieved by the contract that we didn't follow. I'm sure no one's gonna grieve that we let a Connecticut student in here. So I'm going to change my vote because I think it's the right thing to do, as Mrs. Tippett.
And,
And I
And
just have
af-
one other thing, if you let the sixth grade girl, and I don't think I could possibly not let the third grade one in the same household.
yeah. And it's our employee. It's our
Oh,
employee.
no, but I'm saying, I'm voting for it either way, but I was seeing faces, reading them. That's why I was saying if we had to break it down per student, you know, maybe that would change some thoughts.
I was dead set against it when I did come in today, but now I'm gonna change my vote because after him,
Can I ask a question? I think when I first read it, I didn't realize it was just a 1 year, except like 1 year instance. So that does kind of change how I feel about that. I'm really cautious about setting precedents, because I don't want other people to all of a sudden start bringing their kids in, and that could really severely impact our budget. But I do feel where it's a 1 year kind of incident, you know, kind of situation, and considering the circumstances, I think that would be a good thing. My question is still, are we charging, I couldn't get the grasp, are we charging the 5,000 or not?
no.
She said she couldn't handle it. I thought of something else. There are two students, I think, that we let in from Connecticut without tuition a couple of
Yeah,
years ago.
we waived that
We
tuition.
did waive that a couple of years ago, so it has been set before.
Yeah, we did waive
I
tuition.
just remembered that after we were thinking.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
I sympathize, I feel terribly about the situation. I'm concerned of the precedent that we're setting by going against what is in the contract and our policy, and our budgetary constraints. We just had an override that was very, very difficult to attain, and we continuously are making decisions where we're not bringing in the dollars into the school district that we can and need to pay for teachers, to pay for instructional assistants, to pay for programs for our students. So I really struggle with it on twofold. One for the family, and one for our district, and the policies that we need to abide by and make so that we can run a business, because that's what this is. And although we all feel for every student, and we feel for every family, we can't run a business with our hearts only. We have to think fiscally about how it impacts the bottom line, and what about next year if the child is still struggling and we're sitting in this very same seat, and what other doors are we opening up? So I don't mean to sound cold-hearted, but we need to be smart about it financially and for our budget. That's what we're here for.
I'm going to quote a famous quote, students first, and I can't justify for two extra students making someone's life miserable that may have long-term effects that we'll never know if we don't approve this. As I said, when I came in here, I had no intention of it, but the more I think of it, I feel it's the right thing to do. If you want to make an motion, it's for 1 year only, and Mrs. Marshall has that understanding, it's for 1 year only, I'll change my motion.
I think we'll have to.
Okay, you want to take back the second?
Let's take that second.
I'm taking back my motion. I'm going to make a motion that we allow their names, Margaret and Elizabeth Marshall, to attend the Dudley school system for 1 year only, the 2018-2019 school year, with the understanding you now know.
Second.
And I have a second. Any more discussion on it?
I need to ask this question because I could not get clarification on this today. But, you know, being sympathetic to the needs of the student that's struggling, if the needs escalate and that student requires a placement outside of our school classroom, who absorbs the financial cost for that type of placement?
I think we would, because it's our student for
we
the
would.
year. I think we'd have to for the year.
And do we absorb that cost long-term?
Again, this is just one of those things, if we place a student in a school, and then what happens to the district in Connecticut if the district in Connecticut doesn't agree? I mean, I am completely sympathetic and I walk this road, but in the long-term best interest of the student, you know, I have the debate of whether or not it's necessary to work on transitioning that student into the district of where they're going to be receiving services, and that is going to be their home base. Are we enabling a problem by having that student stay here? You know, we're simply, to your point, if we were to follow your point, Mrs. Kabala, if there's minimal cost by having that student in our particular classroom, if that student needs to move out, and we're now looking at picking up a tuition of $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, this is not a small cost for us anymore.
Well, I would hope Mrs. Marshall would re-enroll her, she could re-enroll her student in Connecticut if that case came up, and Connecticut would have to pay the front, right? She could pull her out of, if there was an issue like that ever came that she needed a placement, you could withdraw your child, register in Connecticut, and then we would completely clear. That would be completely legal, wouldn't it?
That's my understanding.
It's like moving to another system. So I would think that issue would be solved. I would hope Mrs. Marshall will understand that we would not want to be picking up a $60,000 placement.
Absolutely.
You just re-enroll them in Connecticut, you put them in Connecticut. No different than moving to Boston or something, really.
I also question if we're even allowed to talk about this.
Well, I
I
think
mean,
we
I
should.
feel like it's prejudging, maybe it's planning, but it kind of feels like we're talking very directly about severe health concerns related to one individual. And I
Well,
can appreciate financially why we might need to talk about it, but it seems like,
When you accept under school choice, you accept all students and what they bring to the table.
Right.
So that's the
That's
reality.
generally
So,
what we're talking.
So I think the difference is here that, you know, Mrs. Marshall has been very
right.
forthcoming
Right.
in her letter. Certainly, you are right, if for whatever reason, Mrs. Marshall felt that her daughter would adjust better, you know, that maybe the anxiousness continues, and maybe it's better that she moves her in November, but as you know, it's it's the unknown. So I think that's
It's
what
the
Mrs.
unknown.
Rabbit was pointing out, that it's the unknown. And I think while we can look at all those things, I think your first decision is really based on the fact that you agree to a contract that does not allow that. So that's your primary, I think, going back to that, do you want to make this an exception? And I know that there were all the other things that go through one's mind when you're making those decisions, rightly so.
Any other discussion? And again, it's just for this 1 year. Stephanie?
I'd really like us to revisit the policy JFs, so that way we can actually put in our own policy.
First of
here.
all, this isn't the policy, this is the contract.
No, but what I'm
But
saying
that other
is,
policy.
In
yeah,
addition
for the
to-
senior,
Yes.
yeah.
and that way they'll
We'll
be.
do that.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
Okay, I'll take a vote then. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, 5 in favor, 2 opposed. All right, we do have warrants this evening, and next meeting dates. Next meeting date is Wednesday, September 12th, Shepherd Hill Regional High School at 7 PM. And Wednesday, September 26th, Charlton Middle School, 7 PM. And the Budget and Finance is going to be September 12th at 5, and that'll be at the central office. Future agenda items, Jamie did want security, so we're going to do that. We'll have to go into executive session, and that is one of the, yeah, because Dr. Nash looked it up and so did I. I found there's 9 instead of 7, and you said actually there's 11 reasons.
It's probably 7, but it's gonna be
I-
So I think it's number 4. I think,
It
wasn't
was number 4, so, and anyone else for the agenda? Stephanie, you want to go over that policy next time, or?
Yes.
Okay. And,
So I have a couple. One, I would like to establish a schedule for the policy subcommittee to start meeting to review policies, and if you'd like, we can start with JF, but Mrs. Antossi and I are on the policy subcommittee.
Okay,
I'd like to talk about revisiting the central office restructuring, which we had the MASC report come out on.
mhm,
We need to put on the agenda the delegate selection for the MASC conference. And a follow-up to the capital planning conversation that we're starting. Mr. Matthew and Dr. Nash have been working on, but we should be putting that on our agenda.
okay. And Sandy, you have all of that? Okay. Anyone else?
We wanted to mention negotiating the next executive session or wait till October, or the second meeting, and we discussed kind of that.
I would assume probably the second
Second
meeting
one in
in
September,
September if we're
okay.
going to work on it in budget and
Okay.
finance. Well, actually, we're not gonna work on it in budget and finance in September.
Yeah.
So October.
Okay.
And are we considering when we're gonna post for the position of, sorry, no longer interim superintendent?
We'll
We're
put
gonna-
that on, yeah. We'll,
We're gonna talk about
we
it in
should talk
September?
about it because we do want to get started as soon as possible. Okay, anything else before I adjourn? Okay, if you think of something, just email me. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, all in favor? We're adjourned.